What would you do if the person you trusted most disappeared with your child in the blink of an eye? Lila stood in the doorway of her daughter's nursery, her heart pounding like a drum in her chest. The room was too quiet, the kind of silence that screamed something was wrong. The crib was empty, the soft pink blanket crumpled at the foot. Emma, her 6-month-old, was gone. So was Margaret, her mother-in-law, who had offered to babysit for just a few hours while Lila ran errands. The clock on the wall ticked past 8 p.m., each second a stab of dread. Margaret's phone, usually buzzing with notifications, was off. No texts, no calls, no trace. Lila's fingers trembled as she dialed again, only to hear the cold, automated voice, "The number you have reached is not in service." The afternoon had started so innocently. Lila had hesitated when Margaret offered to watch Emma. Not because she didn't trust her. Margaret adored her granddaughter, spoiling her with knitted booties and endless lullabies, but because Lila hated leaving Emma, even for a moment. She was a new mother, still navigating the raw, overwhelming love that came with every coo and cry. But Margaret had insisted, her warm smile disarming. "Go, Lila. Take a break. I've raised 2 kids myself. Emma's safe with me." So Lila had kissed Emma's forehead, grabbed her purse, and left, promising to be back by 6. Now, standing in the empty nursery, Lila's mind raced. She retraced her steps, hoping for a clue. The house was untouched, no signs of a struggle, no note, nothing out of place except the absence of her baby and Margaret. She called her husband, Tom, who was working late at the hospital. His voice cracked when she told him. "What do you mean, gone? Mom wouldn't just leave. Did you check the backyard? The car?" Lila had checked everywhere. The car was still in the driveway, Margaret's purse on the kitchen counter, her keys dangling from the hook. It was as if they'd vanished into thin air. Lila's panic grew, a wild thing clawing at her chest. She called the police, her voice shaking as she explained. The officer on the line was calm, too calm, asking questions that felt like accusations. "Are you sure she didn't just step out? Maybe she took the baby for a walk." Lila wanted to scream. Margaret wasn't the type to wander off without a word, and Emma needed her evening bottle. Something was wrong. The police promised to send a car, but Lila couldn't wait. She grabbed her coat and ran outside, scanning the dark street for any sign of them. That's when she saw Mrs. Carter, the elderly neighbor across the street, peering out her window. Lila bolted over, banging on the door. Mrs. Carter opened it, her eyes wide with concern. "Lila, what's wrong?" Lila spilled the story in a rush, her words tripping over each other. Mrs. Carter frowned, hesitating. "I saw Margaret this afternoon, around 4. She was in her car with Emma, but there was someone else with her, a man I didn't recognize. I thought it was odd, but I didn't want to pry." "A man?" Lila's stomach dropped. Margaret hadn't mentioned anyone else. Who could it be? Tom's father had passed years ago, and Margaret lived alone, her social circle small and predictable. Lila pressed Mrs. Carter for details, but all she could offer was a vague description: tall, gray hair, wearing a dark coat. It wasn't much, but it was something. Lila thanked her and ran back home, her mind spinning. Why would Margaret leave with a stranger? And why turn off her phone? As Lila waited for the police, she scoured Margaret's purse for clues. Inside, she found a crumpled receipt from a gas station dated that morning and a small, folded note she hadn't noticed before. It was in Margaret's neat handwriting, meet at 4. Don't tell Lila. The words hit like a punch. Margaret had planned this? Lila's trust, already fraying, began to unravel. She loved Margaret like a second mother, had welcomed her into their lives after Tom's father died. But this note felt like a betrayal, a secret kept from her about her own child. The police arrived, 2 officers with notepads and stern faces. They took the note, the receipt, and Mrs. Carter's statement, but their questions only deepened Lila's fear. Does your mother-in-law have any history of mental health issues? Any reason she might want to take the baby? Lila shook her head, tears streaming down her face. Margaret was steady, reliable, the kind of woman who baked cookies for neighbors and never missed a Sunday service. But the note burned in Lila's mind, a crack in the image she'd held of her mother-in-law. Then came the twist that turned Lila's world upside down. As the officers searched the house, one of them found a hidden compartment in Margaret's purse, tucked beneath a false bottom. Inside was a photo of a young boy, no older than 10, with Margaret's eyes and Tom's smile. On the back, in faded ink, was a name, Daniel. Lila's breath caught. Tom had never mentioned a brother. Was this Daniel the man Mrs. Carter saw? And why would Margaret keep him a secret? Lila called Tom again, her voice sharp with urgency. Who's Daniel? She demanded. There was a long pause, then a sigh. My brother, Tom admitted, his voice heavy. He died when I was a kid. Car accident. Mom never got over it. She doesn't talk about him. Lila's heart sank. The boy in the photo was gone, but the man Mrs. Carter saw was real. Could Margaret's grief have driven her to something unthinkable? Or was there another explanation? The police tracked Margaret's phone last signal to a rural area an hour away. Lila and Tom followed in their car, the silence between them heavy with unspoken fears. When they arrived at the location, a small, run-down cabin in the woods, Lila's legs nearly gave out. The door was ajar, and inside, they found Margaret sitting on a couch, Emma asleep in her arms. A man stood nearby, his gray hair catching the dim light. He looked at Lila with Margaret's eyes, and she knew instantly, this was Daniel, alive, not dead. The story spilled out in fragments. Daniel hadn't died in the accident. He'd been injured, sent to live with distant relatives, and Margaret had been told he was gone forever. She'd only found him again a month ago, a chance encounter at a gas station. He was broken, haunted by years of feeling abandoned, and Margaret had been trying to rebuild their bond in secret, afraid of disrupting Tom's life. That afternoon, Daniel had begged to see Emma, to know his niece. Margaret, torn between love and fear, had agreed but panicked when Lila called repeatedly, turning off her phone to avoid questions. Lila's anger flared, but so did her compassion. Margaret's choices were reckless, driven by a mother's desperate love for a son she thought she'd lost. Daniel, too, was a victim, carrying scars no one could see. As Lila took Emma into her arms, feeling her daughter's warmth, she saw the pain in Margaret's eyes. "I'm so sorry," Margaret whispered, tears falling. "I just wanted to fix things." The police let them go with a warning, the situation too tangled for charges. Lila and Tom drove home in silence, Emma sleeping between them. The trust was bruised, but Lila knew healing was possible. Margaret's love, though flawed, was real. And Daniel, the brother Tom never knew he had, was a new thread in their family's story. Lila looked at her daughter and vowed to teach her the hardest lesson of all: love could lead to mistakes, but forgiveness could lead to redemption. In the days that followed, Lila held Emma a little tighter, grateful for her safe return. She and Tom began the slow work of rebuilding, inviting Daniel into their lives while setting boundaries with Margaret. The nursery was no longer a place of fear but a reminder of what mattered most: family, flawed and fragile, but worth fighting for.